Okay, so let's talk about main idea. The main idea is what the book or section of text is mostly about. Okay? So think about it as the main ice cream part, okay, of our ice cream sundae. Just the general idea of what it's mostly talking about, okay? And then details are like the sprinkles, the caramel, the cherry. They add to the big idea, okay? So, ways you can help yourself figure out what the main idea is to look at the title and headings, okay? The title of our book was I Wonder Why Penguins Can Fly. And then it also says down here, and other questions about polar lands. So that kind of gives us a hint what the main idea is about. What do you think this is probably going to be about?
Penguins. Penguins and how they can't fly.
But it also shows other animals. It also says, and other questions about polar lands. So it has to do with polar animals probably, right? Or anything about polar lands that you might be wondering about, okay? Which we already know because we read it. But just to give you an idea, the title really gives you a clue about what the main idea is, okay? Look at the photographs, okay? If we just glance at the photographs, that can help us know the main idea, okay? So if I just kind of, I see men working in the ice, see animals on ice up here, more animals, okay, lots of animals, right?
Yes.
See here it talks about igloos. It's got an igloo over here in the pictures.
People are building igloos.
Dog sledding. Iceberg. So I can tell that the main idea is probably going to be about what animals maybe live in the polars, right? North Pole and South Pole. Okay? You can also look for words that are used multiple times, so like over and over again, okay? Reread the first and last sentence, okay? So if I read the first sentence of this book, it says, where are the poles? The North Pole lies at the center of the Arctic Circle. At the North Pole, wherever you turn, you will be facing south. The South Pole is at the opposite end of Earth, in the middle of the Antarctic Circle on the continent of Antarctica. Okay? So I kind of read the first paragraph, but so it's talking about the North Pole and the South Pole. Let's look at the last sentence. Who lives where? These lists are a guide to the natural habitats of the animals shown in the book. So that tells you right there, it talks about animals in the book. Okay? So, main idea, we're going to listen to the first half of the story, and you're going to tell me what you think the main idea of just the beginning is. And then we're going to add 3 details that support that main idea. Okay? So now we're going to flip over to this one. Those of you at home are going to be doing the same thing. You just won't have this cute little thing to glue in your spirals. But you are going to write the main idea and 3 details to go with it. Okay? So let's listen to the story on YouTube. I'm going to pause this lesson while you listen to the first half of the story. Only the first half, okay? The second half we will do tomorrow. Okay, so we read this together just a second ago, so I'm going to go ahead and start here. Why is Antarctica the highest and lowest continent? The thick ice sheet makes Antarctica the world's highest continent with an average height of 7,900 feet. At 8,383 feet below sea level, the Bentley subglacial trench in West Antarctica is the lowest place on Earth that is not underwater. Okay, and then over here is another additional fact. At the poles, the sun rises and sets only once a year, so a day lasts for 12 months because Earth is tilted. One pole faces the sun for 6 months while the other pole is dark, and then the opposite pole has 6 months of daylight. How would you like to have 6 months of daylight?
Yeah, 6 months.
That'd be kind of hard to go to sleep, though.
Yeah, kind of.
Why are there 4 poles?
Oh.
Earth is a giant magnet, which is why a compass points to the North Pole. Just in case. The geographic north and south poles are fixed points, but because Earth's magnetic field is always changing, the magnetic north and south poles move every day. Okay, so compass, that was one of our vocabulary words. A compass always points to the north because it's a magnet. How could north become south? Every so often, Earth's magnetic field reverses, so a compass that pointed north would then point south. This last occurred more than 780,000 years ago, and scientists think that it is due to happen again. Can deserts be snowy? Very cold air cannot hold much water, so it rarely snows at the poles. Parts of the Arctic are as dry as the Sahara Desert, and Antarctica is the driest continent on Earth. In fact, it is the world's biggest desert. Did y'all think that a very cold place can be a desert?
No.
No. But it's very dry because the cold air cannot hold much water. So it rarely snows at the poles. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Okay.
A dinosaur.
Were the poles always frozen?
No.
About 100 to 65 million years ago, the climate was warmer than it is today, and the polar ice caps did not exist. Forests reached as far as the South Pole and were home to dinosaurs such as Antarctica pelta. There it is. How cold are the poles? In Antarctica in 1983, a temperature of negative 128.6 degrees Fahrenheit was recorded, cold enough to freeze the mercury in a thermometer. The winter temperature at the North Pole averages negative 29 degrees. That is 30 degrees Fahrenheit colder than a freezer. So can you imagine living there? If you stepped into your freezer and just stayed in there for 5 minutes, what do you think would happen?
You'll freeze to death.
You wouldn't turn to ice and you wouldn't freeze to death, but you would be really cold, wouldn't you?
Yes, and you're under your covers.
So imagine your freezer is 30 degrees while the North Pole is negative 29 degrees. So that's almost 60 degrees colder than your freezer. Can you imagine that? Why is Antarctica colder than the Arctic? So remember, Antarctica is at the bottom of the globe, and the Arctic is at the top. So why do you think Antarctica is colder? This is on your test, so I hope you're paying attention. What do you think, Evangeline?
Is it because the sun doesn't shine on it?
Could be. What do you think, Kelsey? That is a very good guess.
I think because of the thing, it was in the pictures in the pocket, but like I think Antarctica is colder than Arctic because Antarctica is like very cold and it barely gets sunlight. So the thing she said.
Okay, well, let's see. Maybe y'all are right. So remember, Antarctica is at the bottom, and normally we think as the South Pole as being warm and the North Pole being cold, right? Okay, so let's see, why is Antarctica, this bottom one, colder? Antarctica is a continent surrounded by the sea. See how it's surrounded by water?
Yes.
While the Arctic is an ocean surrounded by land. So here's the Arctic. It's an ocean and it's surrounded by land. Water stays warmer than land during the winter. So on average, Antarctica is about 30 degrees colder than the Arctic. Okay? So why is Arctic warmer? Because it's water, right? And water stays warmer. It takes longer for a body of water to freeze than it does land. Okay? So since this is made up of water, it stays warmer. Okay? Antarctica is land, so it freezes or gets colder. Okay? How are icebergs formed? Icebergs are huge blocks of freshwater ice that break off from glaciers or from the ice shelf and float out to sea. The largest known iceberg was bigger than the island of Jamaica, and the tallest was the height of a 55-story building. How thick is polar ice? Sea ice in the Arctic is about 10 feet thick during the winter. The thickest ice is found in the Bentley Subglacial Trench, the lowest point in Antarctica. There, the ice measures up to 15,670 feet. That is almost 6 times the height of the Burj Khalifa in Dubai. Okay? What is permafrost? And this is one of your vocabulary words. Permafrost is ground that is frozen all year long. In 2007, a perfectly preserved baby mammoth thought to have died 10,000 years ago was unearthed from the permafrost in Siberia, Russia. What lights up the sky? The solar wind carries electrically charged particles from the sun toward Earth. Some particles enter our atmosphere above the magnetic poles and collide with Earth's gases, creating a fantastic light show called the Northern or Southern Lights. What is diamond dust? When the air temperature is very low, water vapor in the atmosphere freezes to form tiny ice crystals. These catch the sun's light and sparkle like a sprinkling of diamonds in the sky. Okay, so here's a little picture right here. So it's just like little frozen ice crystals in the air. Which dogs are found at the North Pole? Or which dogs are found at the poles? Sun dogs are bright flares that appear on either side of the sun. Now what is this called?
Oh, sun dog.
Sun dog. When ice crystals in the sky reflect the sunlight, moon dogs are sometimes seen too when the moon is very bright. Okay, so this is ice crystals that are reflecting sunlight. Okay? Does anyone live in Antarctica?
Penguin.
No one lives there permanently, but Antarctica is visited by about 4,000 scientists during the summer. Only about 1,000 stay to brave the cold, dark winter, though. Who first came to the poles? American explorers Frederick Cook and Robert Peary both claim to have reached the North Pole first, Cook in 1908 and Peary in 1909. Roald Amundsen led the first expedition to the South Pole, arriving in December 1911. Early explorers used huskies to pull their sleds, but today dogs are banned from Antarctica to protect the wildlife.
Oh my gosh.
Do people still build igloos?
Yes. Yes.
The word igloo means house in the Inuit language, so people in the Arctic do live in igloos, but igloos made of snow are now built only as temporary shelters during hunting trips. Okay, so igloos are their homes, but the ones you're thinking of that are made out of snow are only built as temporary shelters, not their actual houses.
They build it with ice. No.
Okay, last 2 pages and then we'll stop. Are there any polar plants? Well, you may be thinking it's too cold for plants to survive there.
Yeah.
Well, the poles are covered in ice all year long, but plants grow in less cold areas called the tundra. For a few weeks in the middle of the summer, the Arctic tundra is carpeted in color as plants that have spent the winter beneath the snow burst into bloom. The tundra's flowers attract many insects, so birds flock there during the summer to raise their families and make the most of the insect feast. How do plants survive in the cold?
Ooh.
Tundra plants huddle close to the ground in tight clumps and often have hairy leaves and stems to protect them from the cold. Cup-shaped flowers follow the sun as it moves across the sky.
Whoa.
Which tree grows in the treeless tundra? The word tundra comes from a Finnish word meaning treeless plain. So you would not expect to find any trees there. Yet, a type of willow only 8 inches tall has adapted to the cold, windy climate and provides food for caribou, musk oxen, Arctic hares, and lemmings. Most owls are active only when it is dark, but snowy owls hunt in daylight too. Otherwise, they would starve during the Arctic summer when the sun never sets. Permafrost stops melting snow from sinking into the ground, so it forms pools of water that are perfect nurseries for mosquito larvae. Sometimes the mosquito swarms are so large that they turn the sky gray. In the summer, animals such as snowy owls and caribou take advantage of the plentiful food to raise their young and fatten up for the winter. Okay, so how does permafrost stop the melting snow from sinking into the ground? Remember what permafrost is?
No.
It's like a frozen block of ice, right? Your land is frozen solid for a full year. So if it's frozen solid, is any liquid going to be able to sink into it?
No.
No.
No liquid.
Okay, so the main idea, what do y'all think? It's got to be something about the polar lands, right? Because they were talking about the polar, the North Pole and the South Pole.
The North Pole.
And what about it?
The North.
What could we say? Is it very interesting? It's very different than other places?
Scientists come there for the summer to explore the North Pole and South Pole.
Yes, and they go to explore there because it's a very fascinating place, right?
Yes.
Okay, so could that be our main idea?
Yes.
That's why they're giving us all these questions, because it's very fascinating and it's different, and we're all very curious because nobody's ever really gone there. Okay?
No, not us.
So we could say the main idea is the polar lands are very fascinating Okay, the polar lands are very fascinating. There's a lot to learn about these diverse areas. And there's a lot to learn because we don't experience these kinds of things here. The animals, the plants, the weather, the climate, it's all very new and different to us. So there's so much that we can learn. So that's the big main idea, right? There's a lot of facts that they gave us to support that, how they're very fascinating, and there's a lot to learn. So who can tell me one detail that could go with my main idea. The polar lands are very fascinating. There's a lot to learn about these diverse areas. And it, Kelsey?
Like a detail
What's one thing that sticks out in your mind?
that the North Pole, the people built igloos and when they hunt, they build igloos with snow and ice.
Good, okay, but they were temporary, right? Not their actual homes.
No, not that.
People build igloos as temporary shelters.
People build
And I'm going kind of fast, but we can go back and finish this, or those of you at home can pause to give yourself more time to write. Okay? Another detail. One that kind of sticks out in my mind is that the North Pole ended up being what?
being the North Pole,
Being,
Arctic,
Allie, do you know what I'm going to say?
coldest.
No, the
Ooh.
opposite. The
The
North
ice.
Pole was warmer because it is water, right?
That's what people say. North Pole is warmer. South.
Okay. Can y'all think of anything else? A
Ooh.
detail.
Pole. Ooh,
What else, Kelsey?
there are fascinating things like polar bears, owls,
Okay.
and lots of things.
Polar bears. Musk oxen. And snowy owls are just some of the animals that live there.
Polar bears. Let me sharpen my pencil.
Okay, so that's the main idea in detail. So our main idea was that the polar lands are very fascinating and there's a lot to learn about these diverse areas, the North Pole and the South Pole. And then we came up with 3 details that help support that main idea, that it was fascinating. Okay? Now tomorrow you guys will be working on your own version of main idea in detail using the second half of the book. So tomorrow you guys will start reading on page 16 and we'll finish up at the end of the book. Okay? But that's it for today. Make sure you have this written in your journal as an example to look back at for tomorrow.